Hello and welcome to the Wolves Report. I'm Ryan Lester and thank you for joining us for episode 55, where tonight we'll be doing our best to analyse the Liverpool and Spurs games, take your questions and look ahead to Wolves' trip to Newcastle on Sunday. We've got our usual director of football, Chris Tyler in. Nocky club captain should be in a bit later on. I think he's held up on some traffic on the way home. And we're delighted to welcome Steve Madeley for his first cap on the Wolves Report. Gentlemen, good evening. Thank you for your time on this Tuesday evening. Lots to talk about, some fantastic questions. As always, the show is recorded live, so your comments via YouTube or Facebook, as long as they're clean, reasonable, constructive, get them on. We'll have a look and we'll create to the debate on the show. Steve, we saw each other in the press room last week at Liverpool. Wasn't quite the result we wanted, but what was your take on Liverpool 2 Wolves 0?
I think you always kind of leave a game with the lasting impressions created by how it finished, and obviously didn't finish well at all for Wolves. The second half wasn't very good at all, was it? I don't think it was maybe, on reflection, I don't think it was maybe quite as bad as we thought initially when we came away. I actually thought in the first half, while Wolves weren't particularly great with the ball, I thought without the ball they were excellent in the first half. Then they stopped Liverpool from playing to a large extent. Anfield was pretty quiet, which I think is a mark of how well Wolves did. I kind of look back at my tweets generally after a game, and I tweeted that at half time because, like I say, you tend to get blinded by what you see in the last 20 minutes. So I look back at my tweets, and at half time I was actually saying kind of how well Wolves had done in terms of stopping Liverpool playing. I think substitutions, and this has been quite rare for Lopetegui in his time at the club, substitutions didn't really work at Liverpool, and I thought second half Wolves continued to be not very good with the ball, but then they became also not particularly great without the ball, and they became a lot easier to play against. And in the end, it was probably quite a comfortable Liverpool win, but like I say, I don't think it was maybe quite as bad looking back now with the benefit of time, as we all kind of thought at the final whistle.
Yeah, that's a fair point, Chris. I think he's hit the money. Steve's hit the money on the head there in terms of the first half. I thought. Is that again, mate?
I'll go now.
I thought the way Wolves managed the game first half without being particularly constructive was excellent, and it was a real shutout in the first half. But as with Wolves this season, we haven't seen really two good half performances put together.
Yeah, I think Steve summed it up, perfectly. To be honest, I think it looked like the game plan was quite clear, wasn't it, to still be in the game at half time. And yeah, the Adama sub, we'll obviously come on to Spurs, worked a treat on Saturday, didn't work at Liverpool. We just couldn't get him into the game, could we? We had no threat whatsoever going forward when he came on. We started the game quite brightly, Moutinho had the shot, didn't he? There was a couple of other sort of half chances. I think, the second half, I think we were probably just waiting for Liverpool to score, or that's how it felt, really. I think you said it yourself, Ryan. We had the warning, didn't we, from when Jota fouled Kilman. You think, well, we might get away with this, but we didn't, and I think Liverpool in the end were full value for the win. I don't think any Wolves fan could have any complaint with the result.
Steve, would you say in the second half, Wolves probably lacked a little bit of bravery and almost let Liverpool kept coming without any response? And because if you let someone with the likes of with Darwin, with Salah, goals are going to come, aren't they? And me personally, I thought in the second half they would have walked away that game with some regrets, thinking they probably would have expected to lose, but to go and have a go and get up in their faces. And I could see what the Adama substitution, to the ball in behind, but it just didn't happen. And for me, I think it just. I'm not disappointed with losing at Liverpool. That's the wrong thing to say, but I'm disappointed with the second half because I think they could have been a bit braver.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I think we kind of, as you said, we chatted in the press room after the game, and I think we agreed that while Pablo Sarabia could really have no complaints, kind of on an individual level with being taken off at half time, in hindsight they missed him. Not that he was great in the first half, but he took up positions between the lines and linked up the play, and Adama didn't do that, and Adama doesn't do that. That's not his game. If you got Adama around the pitch, it's up to everyone else really to get him in the game in the areas where he's going to hurt teams. And Wolves just weren't keeping the ball well enough to do that, and he was almost a passenger, wasn't he, in that second half? And like you say, maybe they could have been a bit braver, but I just think I think tactically that substitution, while many times in his short at Molineux, Lopetegui has made defensively from the bench at half time. I think that was one occasion where it just didn't work out for him.
Yeah, I mean, we can't expect a manager to be put on a tactical masterclass with substitutions week in, week out. Although we'll talk about Lopetegui a bit more later on. His substitutions in games, Chris, are usually, well, I know we're only judging him on a couple of months, but I've never seen a manager have an impact tactically with his subs off the bench in my 30 years watching Wolves.
Yeah, we'll come on to Spurs, won't we? And that was almost genius looking back at what happened second half, wasn't it? But no, they just didn't quite work, did they? I suppose he had to make one early with Bueno, and that may or may not have made a difference. I don't know. I'm clutching at straws. Steve's right. Adama you bring on, but you sort of have to find a way of getting him into the game.
Would you say we needed Sarabia and Adama on? Sarabia to link it and then Adama to stretch that space? It almost, although Adama's an ultra-attacking player, having the link taken out of the team, it worked in Liverpool's hands, didn't it? It nullified us.
Yeah, mate. Yeah, it strangely almost gave them more impetus down the left-hand side, which has been the opposite when he's come on against like Robertson, for example. Not even just the home game, but years gone by, he's always caused them problems, and for whatever reason, he didn't. And Tsimikas seemed to have a good game, didn't he? He got the better of Adama, certainly. It looked more of a threat, which was strange. And I think, yeah, Sarabia's not ultra quick, not ultra, keen on the eye, but he did do a job first half that you very noticeable. He took at the right positions. He always was an outlet for the ball, played a couple of nice 1-2s, give and goes. And yeah, if it was a tactical sub, it's one you got wrong. But like you said, Ryan, we can probably give him one, can't we, to be fair, with what he did tonight.
I'm not going to be disappointed with coming away from Liverpool and losing. Other than the Bournemouth game so far, the results have probably gone as you'd expect. To lose at Man City, lose to Liverpool. We've won most of the games. You've got points from most of the games we thought they'd get. So he's done really well. But I don't want to overanalyze. I'd rather move on to the positives. So just a short sort of clip on Liverpool. I got back about 2 a.m. I don't know what time you got back, Steve. It felt very late when I got back for not a lot to talk about really. But moving on to a more positive look at things. Wolverhampton Wanderers 1, Spurs 0 Saturday. The roof came off Molineux after a disastrous first half, Steve, where Wolves somehow managed to keep it at 0-0. It turned out to be a Lopetegui masterclass.
Yeah, I think you mentioned the Bournemouth game, and you look at the Bournemouth game and the Spurs game together. And it's a cliche, I know, but it does just kind of highlight how fine the margins are in the Premier League. Because for all Wolves weren't great in the Bournemouth game, they completely dominated that game for an hour without creating a great deal. Ended up losing it. And then the Spurs game, they were completely under the cosh really for 45 minutes to an hour. Rode the luck a little bit with Spurs hitting the crossbar twice, so it could have been game over at that point. And yet they've gone on and won it 1-0 with some really positive changes, a much improved second half performance. So I just think, like you say, we can overanalyze, but quite often these games just come down to small moments and who gets the better of their small moments. And Wolves didn't get those against Bournemouth, and they certainly did get those against Spurs.
Yeah, I suppose if you'd have said if we'd have drawn against Bournemouth and drawn against Spurs, you'd be not as disappointed, but actually points-wise we're better off now. Yeah. So it's a really good point. I hadn't really thought of it like that, but there's so many games when there is that post width, there's that offside flag, there's the VAR that nobody can see apart from the lines. It is incredibly close. But for me, Tyler, and I know we talked about this on the group chat, but I mean, we have to call it as it is. That for me was probably one of the worst 45 minutes I'd seen Wolves probably since they've been back in the Premier League. Now, we have to call it that way, but I don't recall us having not even a shot, no shots on target, barely flirted with getting in the opponent's half. It was like the Wolves system played totally in the hands of Spurs, and it was pure domination from Spurs, and Spurs will come away kicking themselves, thinking how it wasn't 2-0 at half time.
Yeah, I probably a bit emotional about half time. I put a tweet out saying I almost didn't realise we could be this bad, because I think if you counted the second half at Anfield and the first half against Spurs,
good point.
I don't think we had a touch in the opposition box. And you can analyse and talk about football till you're blue in the face, but that's unacceptable, isn't it? In 90 minutes to not do that. The margins were so fine. Dawson got a little nick on Son's shot that hit the bar, didn't he? And some days you looked in and other days it isn't. But I thought the first half was a real tough watch, like really tough. And you talk about a Spurs team that, yes, are fourth, but, not had much good press recently. It's a clear way of playing. You know how they're going to set up and play. They don't change. So we should have been a bit more aware of that. Some interesting team selections at the start. Obviously, Costa getting a start. Jonny came back in. That was a surprise. So you're sort of thinking, oh, crikey, here we go again. What's going on? I think the only positive really was that first half was probably Lemina's performance. I think he did really well on Kane. Sarr made a couple of saves. But I was going in half time thinking there's only going to be one winner. And I'm sure most Wolves fans were like that. You could sense the nervousness, couldn't you? You could sense the atmosphere wasn't where it needed to be. And it almost, like you've said before, you almost need a decision to go against you or get a bit angry. And then Wolves are angry. They're a different team, aren't they? And there was a bit of a to-do with sort of Kane and Lemina that lifted the crowd a bit. But we just got to half-time somehow, didn't we? By hook or by crook. But yeah, to answer your question, can't think of a positive really from that first half. But second half, I'm sure you'll come on to it, was chalk and cheese, wasn't it? Totally different.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, are we being a bit harsh, Steve, or since you've been covering Wolves, is that as bad as it's got? Because I mean, that first half for me, the only positive I could draw is that Wolves weren't losing. It was a clean sheet, and it just felt like a matter of time.
Yeah, I mean, there were some poor ones, weren't there, in the first part of this season, and I'm sure kind of before my time, you guys would tell me there were some poor ones towards the back end of last season as well. But I can't remember a 45 minutes worse than that in my time covering Wolves. Like you say, Spurs could have been potentially 2-0 up at half time, and it wouldn't have been harsh at all, would it, on Wolves? And the second half, it was chalk and cheese. I mean, it probably took 10-15 minutes of the second half for it to really turn around. In the last half hour, I thought Wolves were comfortably the better side in that
absolutely.
period.
Yeah, there was an acclimatisation period, Chris, and we saw the subs at half time, and it takes a break. Now, Craig Dawson's been magnificent. I like Max Kilman. But then to leave Wolves back three against Kulusevski, Son and Kane in a 3-on-3 situation when attacking is so brave. But what's braver to take off your best player who's man marking one of the world's best, most complete number 9s out of the game? Bravery and a half from the manager.
Yeah, like I said, it's borderline genius. And I mean, how we went off and Nunez stayed on is probably a different conversation, but it just, apart from the Son one where they broke and there was arguably a foul on Semedo, we pretty much negated them second half, didn't we? We matched them up. I mean, Dawson's just imperious, isn't he? And I think having him in the middle with two young lads either side of him seemed to work really well. Collins and Kilman could play a bit higher up and they were pressing. The wing backs were noticeably higher second half. Semedo nearly getting a tap in at the back post. Jonny involved, obviously, in the goal, getting forward as well. It just worked, and it looked really natural. It looked like they've been playing that system. Obviously, some of the players have, but playing that system for a long time. And I think Tottenham probably realised it was just one of them days, and they ran out of steam, didn't they? And ran out of energy. And Wolves, like Steve said, grew into the game, finished it strong. The subs were brilliant. I really liked Sarabia's little cameo. I don't know why I put my hand up there, but his little cameo in the 10 where he was just getting the ball and he was drifting left, right, picking passes. The Adama substitution worked. He was getting crosses in, good crosses as well, not some of his usual tribes that we've seen. Just worked really well. And I don't want to put a negative spin on it, but the only player that I think sort of gives me a bit of a concern is Nunez at the moment. He's making the easy things look really, really difficult. His passing is desperate, and I know he's probably not playing in his best position as to what we've been told that is, but we sort of have to solve that problem, don't we? Because Moutinho came on and totally outshone him, from that substitution. So that's the only slight, quandary, I think, is how do we get the best out of Nunez? But yeah, the second half was fantastic, wasn't it?
Well, let's just jump on. I want to get Steve's take on João Moutinho, because this is something that splits the fans on social media. Well, I don't. I think the majority of fans would agree that João Moutinho is someone that comes on now with second half, 40 minutes, 30 minutes, 20 minutes left, someone of immense experience, still can press for a limited amount of time. But I don't understand why he starts when he comes on and has such an impact from the bench. I mean, I think the last time he played really well starting, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I thought he was pretty good at Villarreal in the first half, where Wolves probably should have been 2 up at half time. But Wolves don't really seem to get anybody close to number 9 when Moutinho's playing, Steve. So can you make any lot? Is it because he's trusted? You can trust him with what he's doing. He's not wasteful with the ball. He's his experience. I don't know. What's your take on why Moutinho gets so many starts recently?
I think it's all of that, and I actually think I would disagree with you on one aspect. I actually thought the first half against Liverpool, he wasn't spectacular, but I thought he did a really intelligent job positionally.
Part of the measured press, yeah.
Yeah,
that's fair, yeah.
In terms of he was pressing when he was able to press, but when he wasn't able to press, he was dropping in and helping out in the midfield. And I thought his positional discipline was one of the key reasons why Wolves managed to nullify Liverpool in that first half. But I was having said all that, I would agree with you in general that his best work comes off the bench. And I think to be honest, I think Lopetegui would probably agree with that. I think the times that he has started, I'm struggling to think of them all off the top of my head now, but I think generally it's been when there haven't been any real solid alternatives. I think the players who maybe could have played have maybe been carrying slight knocks, haven't had more than half an hour in their legs. So I don't think that Lopetegui would generally start Moutinho at the moment if he had what he considered to be a decent alternative. I think he sees him probably as more of a player off the bench these days.
Yeah, I mean, Adama's impact off the bench, Moutinho's impact off the bench. But I mean, we said it a few weeks on the podcast that if someone comes on as well and performs in a game, I know it sounds like pretty basic, but if they're consistently doing that, you kind of have to reward them with the start. But that doesn't seem to work with Moutinho, and it's not really worked with Adama. But with the game being more modern now and having 5 subs, you can comfortably make 2 subs at halftime every week if you want to. So maybe that's I think that'll be the role for Moutinho, depending on injuries and form for the rest of the season, certainly for Adama. But back onto the Spurs, second half tactical masterclass, Steve. The bravery. We talked about the leaving 3-on-3 with Kulusevski, Son, and Kane, but Mario Lemina was having a dominant first half. He was bullying Kane. Harry Kane is a strong footballer. He's horrible to play against, but you have to respect him. Now, to take off someone that's completely dominating him, it takes some balls to do that.
It does, and I think like everyone else, I assumed that it must have been an injury, and I was shocked after the game when Lopetegui said that it was a tactical decision, because you kind of thought, well, even if you're going to stay with 3 at the back, why would you change the 3 that when he's done so well on Kane? But clearly he wanted, like you said, he wanted Collins and Kilman either side of Dawson to be able to bring the ball out. And yeah, I was a bit confused as well about why he came off and Núñez stayed on. What you would say is, even when he's not having a great game, Núñez is probably a better ball carrier than Lemina. So he's going to get you up the pitch from your penalty area to the opponent's penalty area probably more effectively than Lemina. I mean, what he does with the ball when he gets there is the real kind of frustration with Núñez at the moment. There's no doubt that he's strong in terms of carrying the ball, but he's like you said, his use of it when he gets an opportunity just isn't up to scratch at the moment. It's certainly not for the kind of money that Wolves have paid for him.
Yeah, absolutely. On Matheus Núñez, what I would say Chris hinted on it then, I do feel a bit sorry for him, because Wolves seem to be playing some kind of bespoke 4-4-2 where he's a narrow left midfielder, not a winger. But the best bits of his game is when he comes and collects, when he recovers the ball from deep centrally and then drives forward. So, I mean, you mentioned this, Chris. It's hard to criticise when he's out of position, but basic passes can be made anywhere on the pitch. It doesn't matter where you're playing. You need to be finding teammates. And I just thought his play was quite casual, but I want to credit him for, no matter how average some of his performances are, the guy never stops. He's tracking, he's running, he always offers for the ball, and that's commendable, and that's a sign of a great pro. Will he be at Wolves next season? If he carries on playing like he is, he probably will be. Who's going to pay 50 million when he's had no goals? I think, has he got 1 assist, Steve? You probably correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe 1 assist, no goals.
I think he's one of those players, though. Again, it's such an easy thing to say and a bit of a cliche, but if you put him in a better team, I think he's one of those players that would probably shine. You know, I think if you put him in a team where he's got sort of better players around him, and it's an easy thing to say. You can say that about a lot of players, but I just don't get the feel that we get the best out of him. And I think obviously Lopetegui, I got told off how to pronounce his name, so I'm going to call him J-Lo. I think he struggles. He wants to get him in the team and find somewhere for him. And I think that's why you consistently see him in the team. There's no doubt, I think we all agree he's a great prospect. He's a good, strong footballer who dribbles it really well. But like you said, you can be anywhere on the pitch, but if you can't pass it 5 yards, you know, for £45 million, you're going to start to naturally ask questions. He's not been a goal threat, like you say. So I think it is a bit of a problem, and how do you solve it? I don't know.
I think, like you said, Ryan, I do feel sorry for him in a way that he's not playing consistently in his favourite position. But then you have to ask why he's not playing consistently in his favourite position. And I think it's quite telling now that two consecutive head coaches, if you count Steve Davis as a permanent head coach for a short time, haven't felt able to play him consistently in his preferred position. And Steve Davis actually said on the record, he described him. He talked about how talented he was, but he described him as being loose in that number 6 position, which is the position he likes to play. Which basically I took to mean they don't trust him out of possession. Lopetegui hasn't played him there unless he's had no real alternative, and so you have to conclude from that Lopetegui feels similarly to how Steve Davis felt in terms of his work out of possession, and maybe they think he's a bit of a liability in that position.
Which is crazy, isn't it? Because I think he was one of the players of the season at Sporting last year. Now, correct me if I'm wrong again. I believe Sporting played 3-4-3, and he was one of the 2 pivots, but he had the license to bomb on a little bit. So absolutely agree with you guys. He's someone that wants to be playing as one of the 2, but if he can't be trusted, and no disrespect to the Portuguese league, the Premier League's probably a little bit less forgiving, and he has been sloppy with his passing. So at what point, Steve? At what point, if a Pedro Neto, if Sarabia, if all these players are playing well, does he play a natural wide player? And he goes, how much goodwill has he got in the locker?
It's a good question because he has played in wide left when natural wide left players have been available. So as Chris says, it seems like he just want to get him in the team for all the things that he does bring. I mean, I imagine you want him in there for set pieces for one thing because he's a big strong guy, so he increases your height at set pieces. He will carry the ball for you, but like you say, that there must come a point where if Pedro Neto gets back to full fitness and has a few good cameos off the bench, he's got to be pushing for that role. Daniel Podence, we don't really know what's going on there. He was left out for tactical reasons on Saturday, but if he hits on a decent run of form again, then he's a contender. Once Hwang's back, Hwang was doing a really good job for Lopetegui, an unspectacular job, but a good job nonetheless. So
Wolves have missed him, and I didn't think I'd say that, Steve. The directness and the trust he brings with the ball, he's trusted, isn't he? So I jumped in then, Steve, but I don't really give Hwang praise very often, but Wolves have missed him.
Yeah, they haven't. But I think with those 3 that we've mentioned, and you've also got the option of playing Ryan Aït-Nouri wide left, which Lopetegui's done as well previously. So Nunes, I don't think can think himself guaranteed that place indefinitely. And while Lemina's playing as well as he is, and Neves is obviously a shoo-in to start, then you think he's going to struggle to get that one of those 2 places in the central midfield.
Yeah, if eventually, Daniel Podence was probably Lopetegui's key player. The first sort of month and a half, he was getting key goal at Everton, key goal at Villa, and performances to go with it as well. So I don't really know what's happened there. I'm not sure Daniel Podence will be at Wolves come start of next season. I know he splits the fan base, but he's someone for me that's always brave when he gets the ball. He'll try something different when it's boring. Yeah, he frustrates people with the flicks and tricks, but it's those moments of magic that opens up teams. And for teams that don't score very many goals, you've got to try them. But yeah, we shall see. Moving on to a positive, Tyler. I mean, and we've given him some fair criticism, I think, of the last few months. But Raul Jimenez, and I'm sure you both come to this, that guy came on like a man possessed on Saturday afternoon. He looked like he was angry that he'd been dropped. I don't know. He was livid. He was back, smashing players in tackles out for the corner, pressing, energy, good movement, part of the goal. Tyler, we've criticised him, but Jimenez was probably Wolves' best player with Jimenez on Saturday.
Where's he been?
So with Neves.
That's all I say. Where's that Jimenez been? Because when that Jimenez plays, no one can criticise him when he plays like that. Like I said, the appetite was there, the hunger, the desire. I don't think I've ever seen him slide tackling our own half before. I don't think I've ever seen that.
No.
Like I said, I suppose it's almost a bit, not more frustrating, so I don't want to go back, but if he'd have been playing like this for the last, 2 or 3 months, who knows where we'd be. But it was Jimenez pre-injury, wasn't it? He was causing defenders trouble. He wasn't letting them rest. He was winning headers. He was winning free kicks, flick-ons, being dangerous in the air. Good header, really. He couldn't do much more for that header that forced the save. He headed it into the ground as they're told.
It was like 2019 with that Adama cross.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I thought, I was like 33 again for 1 minute. Like, I was still going back in time. And Adama, even the ball, nice out your feet, whip it in, header. It was old school. He'll probably get the assist for the goal because he had a touch and bang on target. Pretty faultless performance, really. And with him and Kuna, I think it was mentioned even before this game, wasn't it, at Fulham? They were seen to be striking up something. And that continued when he came on. He played a lovely little through ball for him, didn't he? Had the goal ruled out for the offside, which was a yard at best. Yeah, I have been one of his biggest critics, but if he plays like that, he won't get any criticism, and hopefully he can kick on and finish the season strong. But I do like the look of him and Kuna together with a nice little number 10 or Adama either side. Hopefully it bodes well for the next few games.
Yeah, Steve. I mean, that Raul Jimenez, it looked like Europa League, FA Cup semi-final Jimenez. It looked like the player that Wolves have had, and the fan base fell in love with the song and the relationship. But I don't know. He just seemed angry to me, Steve. And I know that's making it put really simple, and that anger made him more determined. He was flattening people. He was snarling. There's no fear with him heading the ball anymore. I think understandably for a little while he wasn't quite the same with headers, but now he looks like he played with coming on as a sub. He looked like he had a point to prove.
Yeah, and I think we've seen little flickers of that, haven't we, in the last couple of months? But nothing really kind of linked together consistently. And then the Fulham game, which is one I watched on TV, but I was impressed with him in that game. And then he took it on to a different level again when he came in against Spurs. And like one of you said, the selection of Costa ahead of him was an interesting one, and that didn't work. And I think I tweeted at the time that Costa went off. As much as you don't want any player to ever be injured, it might actually do Wolves a favour, because to me, Jimenez, while he probably at his age now, he'll probably never get back to be consistently the player he was around the Europa League time. To me, he's still just a much better option from the start than Diego Costa is at the moment, and he does still put himself about. He does still show intelligence in terms of link-up play. I think more so than Costa does. Maybe Costa's a bit more physical than him, but I just wonder, looking back now, how much a lack of confidence in his body was playing a part in the early part of the season. He was obviously still kind of coming back from the head injury, but he also had this problem that was troubling him before the World Cup, and clearly the World Cup was a massive thing for him. I think maybe he understandably rushed a little bit to get back for the World Cup.
I can cut him some slack for that. It's a World Cup, his last chance,
and set himself back. But I think maybe we're only now beginning to see kind of the fully fit Raul Jimenez. And like I say, maybe he'll never quite get back to peak Raul Jimenez, but like you'd take another half a dozen games of the Raul Jimenez we saw on Saturday, wouldn't you?
Absolutely. I think as well, Raul's a very intelligent footballer, and when he's got that snarl about him, because I think he's always been competitive and strong. But when you've got footballers around you and pace, like he had with Adama in like 2019, with Kuna up there, it makes Raul look better. You've got runners instead of holding it up and thinking, no disrespect to Jay Martini, I've got to play it back. When you've got someone with the afterburners on, running into the space, open it up. I think he had a runner. We haven't really talked about it a lot, but the goal, it was because Jimenez really connected with that. It's a great shot and it's created the opportunity. When was the last time Jimenez turned and hit one like that? So absolutely, having the players and runners around him, it bodes well for Wolves the rest of the season. If whatever he did, he needs to carry on doing that. Just one comment. I'm seeing the comments come through. This has made me laugh. Adrian Richards, Nocky did nothing to warrant being dropped. Ryan's lost it. Well, I've been told a lot worse than that anyway, but I would take that. Nocky's running a little bit late from what he's been doing today, so he has been trying to get on, but I'm not sure he's going to make it back. But I'm sure he'll appreciate your kind words, Adrian. I won't put some of the insults you've put up to me for leaving Nocky out, but we'll leave that there. Let's just talk about the goal. Then we've talked about Raul's influence on that. Tyler, we have waxed long and hard about Adama Traore on this show. We all love him. Well, I love him, and I've made you listen to me because I absolutely love him. Wolves winning. I don't care who plays, who scores, but I was delighted for Adama Traore. And a lot of Adama's best work comes from when he's got a split second to think, and that was a fantastic finish under pressure.
It's always when he's got no time to think. It really is. And it's a ridiculous finish, isn't it? If that's a Haaland doing that at the weekend, Salah, you're not hearing the end of it, are you? It was pure instinct, pure ball's coming to me, need to get something on it. I'm not sure he could do it again, 99 times out of 100. I think that was the one that went in, but he deserved it, didn't he? He was a threat all game. Ben Davies had probably the easiest first half he's ever had, but
and the worst second half.
He was terrified, wasn't he? Every time we got the ball and there was that space there, he was terrified about being turned. And he had him on toast, didn't he? Put a lovely ball in for the header. Great finish. And there's obviously something going on, isn't there? Because the response when he scored and after the game towards him, whether he stays or whether he goes, and I'm inclined to think he goes, you can't knock the guy. He does split fans and sometimes he looks lethargic and lazy, but similar to Podence, that's the sort of players they are. They're not ones that run around but in a gust. They just don't. They don't look that way. And it's hard to criticise him. What is it, 4 or 5 years he's been here now? We'd have probably liked to have seen him maybe develop a bit more in certain areas, wouldn't we? But he gets you off your chair, doesn't he? And as a football fan, those players are sort of a dying art now, aren't they? He gets you off your seat whenever he gets the ball. And he took his goal brilliantly, and it's nice to see. But he's obviously got a good relationship with the manager and the fans, hasn't he? So, sorry, his peers in the squad. So,
absolutely, Steve, someone we both respect and talk about, and Tyler as well. When I was in the car with Mike Taylor, he said how much more fun it is to commentate when Adama Traore is playing because it's fun, because it's entertaining, and I'm sure from a writing point of view, he's somebody that makes something happen. It might frustrate, but he's capable of skinning any defender in the world. And although not always productive from the start, Wolves finishing the game with Adama Traore are such a better side.
I think he kind of falls into the same bracket as Moutinho now, doesn't he? But for different reasons. That he's more effective from the bench, and he does frustrate me. And I've got to admit, I'm kind of split on whether it would be a good thing for Wolves to keep him beyond this season. I think if we were still in the age of three subs, then I would say definitely not. But I think in the age of 5 subs, he could be a really useful player to have. I mean, I saw a bit of him when he first came to Villa as an even younger player, and I can tell you he was even more erratic then. He has kind of polished his game a little bit in the time since then. But yeah, he does kind of get you off your seat, doesn't he? But he also frustrates the hell out of you because he'll beat a fullback probably 10 times a half and deliver one decent cross. And but I guess if he can increase that output, then he probably beat one of the big 6 clubs.
I mean, I personally think one of the, other than Wolves, the biggest player that suffered when Raul got injured was Adama Traore. That relationship those two had that season, in terms of setting each other up, it was the most productive pairing in the Premier League that season. You don't fluke that. So there's a great footballer in Adama Traore. It's just about finding the best way to get a tune out of him. And I think forever he'll be an impact sub at Wolves. I don't see him starting games, and I think he probably knows that, and therefore he probably won't stay. But what we got now, 12 games or something or so left. Let's enjoy him while he's here. Hopefully he can play his part. If he wants to go, if he goes to Napoli and plays Champions League football, good luck to him. I don't begrudge him either way what he does. I'd love him to stay because he's fun. And when you're chasing a game, or even when it's a close game and you can stretch an opponent, there's nobody like Adama Traore. So absolutely hope he stays, and it's an absolutely fantastic finish. Someone's asked a quick question about it. I wasn't going to talk about it. Someone mentioned about Jonny, who's we haven't really mentioned him, but he's been out for so long. Vernon Williams asked, how do you think Jonny did on Saturday? Do you think he will start at Newcastle? We'll get our money's worth, Steve. You can have that one.
I thought he did okay in the first half, but there were times when he looked a little bit rusty. But I thought when they switched to the three at the back in the second half, and he was playing as a wing back, kind of in that role that we saw him at Wolves when he first came in. I thought he did really well. And the second part of the question, do you think he'll start at Newcastle? Yes, I don't see any way that he won't, assuming he's fit, because Lopetegui had the option of starting at Nouri on Saturday, and he chose Jonny. He obviously trusts Jonny more to make good decisions defensively. So having done that for a home game, I don't see why you then go to Nouri for an away game where, in theory, you're going to be doing even more defending. So yeah, I think I'd back Jonny to start again. I think.
No, I might be overthinking this a little bit. I would start Jonny as well. He's done nothing, clean sheet. Why would you change any defenders if you've got a clean sheet? But I was thinking as well. I mean, I think he mentioned it on the presser on Friday, that he suggested that Ait-Nouri wasn't his only option. Was he afraid of what happened? Because Ait-Nouri can't really play 2 games in a week, and he played a large chunk of the game at Liverpool. Well, he can play, but he struggled up with cramp like last season. So was he thinking, I need to protect Ait-Nouri, and I've got a good option in Jonny? And actually, Johnny's taken his opportunity really well. I may be overthinking things, Chris, but
yeah, I think you are, mate. Yeah,
that's what I'm here to do, getting it all off my chest. But Chris, it's a great game from Jonny. He's been solid, and as Steve said, second half it looked like the Jonny of old, who is naturally probably for me a better wing back than he's a fullback.
Yeah, 100%. Again, it was like I was going back in time, wasn't it? Agreed with Steve. He did start a little bit shaky in the 4. His clearly best position is left wing back, isn't it? He likes that, doesn't he? He likes that. He's not quick, is he? He doesn't really whip them in with his left foot, but he just gets in good little pockets and positions like he did for the goal in the build-up. Hard to leave him out, isn't it? He was sort of the forgotten man, wasn't it? We were all just talking about Bueno and Ait-Nouri, who's starting, who's staying, who's the best one. And he was forgotten, and he came back in, got a good solid 7 out of 10.
But that's Jonny, though, isn't it? That's Jonny, isn't it? He's missed a 7 out of 10 his whole time at Wolves.
And there's no problem with that. And I was just surprised. Like, I know you spent probably 18 months of your life, Ryan, talking about whether Wolves play 4 at the back or 3 at the back. But I was just surprised how comfortable we were and how well it seemed to work, and whether that was just a one-off because it was, a half of football. But just looked very nice, didn't it? I thought. And he's got another option there, but he tends not to always pick the same team, though, does he? He tends to make changes to the opposition. He keeps us guessing. We don't know who's going to play. Hard pressed to drop him, like you say, after a clean sheet. But would I be surprised if Ait-Nouri played at Newcastle? No, I probably wouldn't be.
No, you don't know. He's very much a manager, horses for courses. He doesn't really care. He's not really interested in loyalty. He's interested in the best for Wolverhampton Wanderers, and he reflects that in his substitutes. When you sub your best player, who's marking one of the best players in the world out of the game at half time, and you get it right, that is a ballsy call. This is episode 55 of the Wolves Report. Steve Madeley has joined us from The Athletic, Chris Tyler, our Director of Football, and myself, Ryan Lester. Unfortunately, we're missing Nocky tonight. He may catch the end of the show, but if not, he'll be back with us next week. Thanks for all the abuse for leaving Nocky out of the matchday squad today. Let's move onto some questions. This one's a bit of a tongue-in-cheek one, but it's good fun. Graham J asks, how do you think Tim Spears really felt inside when Adama smacked that beauty into the net? Now, I wouldn't put you in a position, Steve, but Tyler, you can answer that one.
I think we could tell by his tweet, couldn't we? I think it was a bit, tongue-in-cheek. He had a bit of banter with it, didn't he? I mean, I don't know him as well as obviously you guys do, but obviously you're his colleague, aren't you, Steve? But I'm sure there was a little fist pump, wasn't there, to the side? You know,
you're covering one club, but you can't help the club you support, can you? So,
well, yeah, he was sitting right next to me, and if there was a fist bump, I never saw it. I think it must have been an inwards fist bump if there was one.
Yeah.
Excellent.
We've all been there, haven't we, in the home end? But, yeah.
Total respect at work. Obviously, we've got time for that. Thank you for your question, Graham. Next one up, Greg Richards asked, do you think we will see a return to 5-2-3 or even a 5-2-3 until the end of the season, given the number of central midfielders, or is it a one-off to match Spurs? You can have that one, Steve.
I'd be surprised if you look back at Lopetegui's coaching career. He does tend to be a 4-3-3 stroke 4-2-3-1 man. And I'm not saying he won't do it for specific halves against specific teams like he did on Saturday, but I would be surprised if he rips up his plan A completely and starts playing 3-5 back on a regular basis. I could be wrong, but I'd be surprised.
Yeah, Chris, bringing you into that one as well. I think it was very much a horses for courses. They're dominating areas of the pitch because of their formation. We matched them up, went toe-to-toe with a talent. I think it was more of a tactical thing than a thing for the future. So, but even if he did start it, I wouldn't be disappointed because the three centre-backs and the wing-backs all look comfortable.
Yeah, I think we've had this chat many a time. I don't really care what the formation is if we've got an attacking outlet. And I think numbers-wise, getting men forward second half was as good as I've seen us for a long time. We have 3-4 players in the box. So if that means we can do that playing wing-backs, then I'm all for it. But I'm not too fussed. The guy knows what he's doing, doesn't he? He's an elite football manager. I'll trust him whatever formation he goes for. But it's a nice option to have, isn't it? Because they looked very comfortable. We'd only really been good at it when Cody was there. Sorry to bring him up, Ryan. But Dawson there was solid as a rock, wasn't it? With them two either side, it looked perfect. So, nice option to have, but I'm with you. I think his preferred formation is that 4-3-3, 4-4-2.
Absolutely, and no disrespect to Cody on that comment. I was thinking that earlier on. It makes a difference when you're playing three centre-backs who are all centre-backs and defenders, when they can all head the ball, when they're all got a bit more physicality about them. You can probably defend a bit better like that, but obviously probably not the range that Cody had when he was there. No disrespect to Cody.
They can all play as well, though. Those three, they can all play. Collins can play. Collins is comfortable carrying it. Kilman, great distribution. And Dawson was pinging a few worlders, wasn't he? So
great balls for Adama.
They're all comfortable on the ball as well.
Absolutely. Great question there, Greg. Appreciate that. As always, I tweet out before the show. I usually take my questions off Twitter. I've had a great response, so get on as many as I can. I can't obviously get them all, but I do appreciate that. The questions so far. Borley. Evening, Borley. Neves, incoming 2-match suspension. No way he doesn't get booked over the next 6 games. Who comes in and takes the captaincy? What a great question. First of all, I mean, you can open that one, Tyler. First of all, he's right. The way Neves plays, if he's not chirping at the referee, he's pulling someone down. He's a very good tactical fouler. And when you're playing that position, part of your job is to take the hit for the team. And he's done that a lot this season. So I'll be surprised if he lasts 3 games, never mind the next 6 games, Tyler.
Yeah, agreed. It's coming. I think it's easy. I think Dawson takes it, doesn't he? I think it's a bit of a no-brainer. He's a leader by the way he plays and the way he marshals, and I can't see a better candidate than him.
Steve?
I'd maybe say I think as much as we've said he's not as effective from the start. I think probably Moutinho comes in. because you need someone in that midfield who's composed on the ball, who's going to thread some passing through, who's going to create something. And I think if Moutinho comes in, he's probably a strong candidate to be captain as well with his experience.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't read that as a two-part question. I just read it as the captaincy. So, yeah, I wouldn't put Dawson centre midfield, is what I'm saying. But
right.
I would give him.
You watch Lopetegui do it now. Who knows what's going to happen?
Yeah, if he does, I'd back him.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great point that Bawley makes, and just what I would say though, and Steve, correct me if I'm wrong on this. If Neves got booked in a game and got a second booking, he would get a 1-match ban and not a 2-match ban.
What have you been reading this week?
Yeah, I'm not sure about that actually, but I think then he would still be at risk, wouldn't he, of getting a 2-match ban further down the line.
Yeah, I don't know. It was just something I read earlier on, so I might be wrong, but this is what happens when I get stuck in a Wolves wormhole and I'm just reading endless tweets and what people have said. That's just what someone suggested, but it's a really interesting point. The most scary thing about that is not who's captain though. He's actually missing Neves for 2 games because we didn't talk about it much in the game, but we're so used to him now, Steve, setting these ridiculously high levels. We don't give him as much praise now because you're expecting an 8 out of 10 Neves week in, week out, recovering the ball, comfortable getting out when he's pressed. He's got a nice little turn now, 40-yard passes, retention. For me, I'm not particularly worried about who's captain. I'm worried about Neves being out of the team.
Yeah, I mean, I sat down on Sunday morning to write my piece from the game, and kind of what one of the sections was about Wolves rolling back the years with Jonny coming in and doing well, and Moutinho playing that ball through, and Raul creating the goal, and Adama scoring the goal. And I almost forgot to mention Ruben Neves because like you say, it's just become routine now, hasn't it, for him to be 8 out of 10, and he wasn't spectacular against Spurs. He wasn't kind of anything out of the ordinary for Ruben Neves, but he was still really good because that's just the levels we've kind of got used to it. And under Lopetegui, when the rest of the squad have kind of raised their levels quite significantly, I would say it's almost easy to think that Neves has kind of dropped away because he perhaps doesn't stand out quite as much. But that says nothing about him and everything about how everyone else has improved.
Yeah, that's fair. And I think he's been so good for so long and came a boy and he'll leave a man, whether he stays, whether he extends, I don't know. But like Adama, I mean, probably more than Adama, he's going to be a huge loss when he goes. But consistently, usually you say about your fullbacks being 7 out of 10, that's what you want. When you've got a midfielder that's racking up 8 out of 10 performances and you just become used to it now. I mean, we forget to talk about it. Steve, you almost forgot to write about it. This is how good that guy is. We are so used to him being fantastic. What a play. Great question anyway, Bawley. Thanks for your question. Kev Blackman asks, with clubs like Spurs and Chelsea struggling managers, can you see a club like this trying to tempt Toby away from Wolves? Ooh, let's hope not. Could he be tempted away, Tyler, if one of those come in? Throw some big cash at him?
I don't think so. I don't see it, do you?
Are they going to sing the Lamborghini song to him? I don't know. I think so.
I mean, we're not here to talk about other clubs, are we? But yeah, if Conte and Potter are still managers of those clubs in August, certainly Spurs, you'd be surprised, wouldn't you? But I don't know. I mean, he's in the conversation with top European football managers, isn't he? So yeah, maybe, but I just don't see it. I think, you know, he's here to hope to do a job. It took how many years to, you know, finally persuade him to come, and he's taken on the project, hasn't he? So hopefully he's here to stay. But he might be in the conversations, but I don't see him being linked or taking jobs at those two clubs just yet.
Steve, I think we're going to be 3 out of 3 on this. I'll be very surprised to see him tempted away. Particularly, he was Jeff's first love. He left Jeff to go and manage Spain, understandably so. Middle championship side or go and manage Spain. It's an absolute no-brainer. So if someone came in, it wouldn't surprise me, but you couldn't see him leaving now, could you, Steve?
I couldn't see him leaving now. The question seems to kind of hint at it happening quite quickly when they're talking about Spurs and Chelsea struggling with managers, and I can't see that. But partly because the greater job as he's done at Wolves so far, I I think those clubs would want to see more. Would want to see more over a longer period of time before they went down that road. Now, if maybe in a couple of years' time, if you're still doing a great job at Wolves, and one of those clubs comes in and they can offer Champions League football, then maybe you might be tempted. But that's not something I think that Wolves fans should worry about, because if that's the case, it's going to be because Wolves have had a really good couple of years.
Well, absolutely. If that's a really good point. It's, you kind of want people think, you want to be in that situation, because, as you said, if he's put himself in that kind of conversation, it's Wolves, because Wolves are doing brilliantly well. Kevin, thanks for your question. I think we covered this one earlier on, but I wanted to bring it up anyway. Where should Jonny Lopetegui be playing Nunez? Obvious talent, but looks lost out wide or as an attacking midfielder. I know we covered this earlier on, guys, but
the bench.
But then it's going to be a 4-2-3-1 then.
Well, where does he get in the team at the moment?
Well, you're not dropping Lamine or Neves, are you? Absolutely.
Like Steve said, if Neto comes back, Wang, Sarabia,
Pedence,
they're going to be the long-term left side option. Where does he get in? Form-wise, he shouldn't be playing, should he? Really?
No.
Coutinho came on and showed how good he can be. Where do you play him?
I think he arguably gets in for me if you're playing a kind of an outright 4-3-3 with one midfielder sitting and two bowmen on either side, then for me he probably gets in as one of those two at the moment. But if you're playing 4-2-3-1 with two pivots and a number 10 and two wide players, I don't see where he gets in that system at the moment.
Yeah, I agree.
With the 4-3-3, I think it was Borley that asked me on the weekend. He said, if you're playing that three, who is the one that goes and supports the striker? Because it's they all like to be fairly deep, don't they? Neves does.
Well, if you play,
and Nunez likes to pick it up deep and run with it. You don't get anyone close to the striker, do you? Which is what happened at Liverpool. So,
well, if you're playing that system well, then you, in theory, you have two of them doing it, don't you? Alternating and doing it in turns. Your two number eights, to use the modern kind of coaching speak, are kind of both charged with at various times supporting the striker. But like you say, Wolves haven't really got anyone naturally who does that. I mean, if Lamina sits, then Neves gets a bit further forward, but he's not going to be one very often getting beyond the striker, is he? That's probably a position that Wolves, if they want to play 4-3-3 going forward beyond the summer, probably do need to look to fill.
Because Wolves have got, from having hardly any midfield options, Wolves have got, when everyone's fit, they've got so many midfielders, but none of them really break and get into the box and score. Not disrespecting Boubacar's goal against Leeds in the Cup, because that was fantastic, but I don't really think that's his long-term game. But yeah, interesting. Great question, Paul. Thank you. Moving on to Jack, we have on to episode 55 of the Wolves Report with Steve Madeley, Chris Tyler, and myself, Ryan Lester. We've got about 7 minutes left. A couple of more questions. Briefly go over the Newcastle game and get our predictions. Thank you for your questions. Jake Walker asks, Brighton and De Zerbi, getting bigged up on Monday Night Football. They have 17 points since the restart, the same as Wolves. Is it because Wolves are are still amongst the relegation contenders that he's not really getting the credit he has? But the form table, Wolves are 7th since the start of the World Cup. Out of the bottom 8 in the relegation, he's top of that table. Tyler, is he not getting the credit he deserves, or is he doing what you expected?
Might have been Jake. It was someone else that made a point to hit home with me. And since he came here, Boxing Day was the first real game, wasn't it? The league game. There's only one result that we can be unhappy with, really, and that was Bournemouth. Every other result, really, we can't moan too much. The games we've lost have been Liverpool, United, City. We've beat people around us, West Ham, Everton, Southampton. So realistically, it's hard to give him any, on that basis, it's almost hard to give him any criticism whatsoever. I think Brighton are ahead of us. Teams like Brentford are, because they have that clear identity and pattern and way of playing football. That won't change. And they are nicer on the eye. They're easier on the eye than us, aren't they? So I think that's why those clubs are getting a lot of attention at the moment. And rightly so, it's their time to. But yeah, to answer the question, the job is done. I think 1.54 points per game. If we carry that on, it's 45 points at the end of the season, which is a comfortable mid-table finish.
And on a full season, previously, wouldn't that have got you roughly around 7th?
Yeah, 58 points, 7th. Yeah, it's like what we got when we finished 7th twice. So he's obviously doing a very good job, isn't he?
Steve, is he getting enough credit that he deserves, or is he? Are we going to keep our powder dry for when Wolves are safe in the Premier League?
Yeah, I think maybe he's flying a little bit under the radar, but I don't know. I know sometimes fans get a bit wound up about their club or the manager not getting enough credit. I'm not sure it particularly matters really. I think as long as he gets the points and keeps Wolves up, that's what matters, isn't it? It's not what the outside world are making of it, particularly. At least it wouldn't bother me particularly. I don't think.
Yeah, if Wolves are, I think sometimes when you see the Sky coverage, they understandably you're going to cover the market that watches the most of the games, and numbers wise, that's not really Wolves and probably Brighton even sometimes, but yeah, probably league position's got to do with it. Thanks again for your question, Jake. This one you can finish off, Steve. Corcas Wolf, is there a potential partnership involving, I think it's supposed to say Raul, my typo, Cunha and Adama on the horizon?
Yeah, you can certainly see it, but I think probably from the start, probably more likely to see a combination of Raul, Cunha, and Sarabia. And I know that Sarabia is flattered to deceive a lot of the time so far, but you can definitely see there's a player in there. The fact that Lopetegui has often kept him on the pitch when a lot of us I think would have probably taken him off tells you how much Lopetegui thinks of him. So I think yes, we'll see Adama from the bench. Maybe he'll start a few games, but I think Sarabia with Raul and Cunha is probably the combination we're probably going to see more of between now and the end of the season.
The main two on there, I mean, I agree with Steve. I don't think we'll see Adama. I think it'll be Sarabia. And again, I really like Sarabia. But what excites me about that question there is the relationship between Raul and Cunha between now and the end of the season. We saw, Chris, the introduction when Cunha came on. Raul, he was having a good game anyway. But when he's got a strike partner or a 10 or a 7 running or an 11 running off him either side, it just made Raul look even better. And Cunha looks like, again, without scoring, it looks like the player we paid some money for.
Yeah, we've all talked about it. He looks more comfortable. Cunha looks, well, I think they both do. They both almost look more comfortable with each other there, don't they? I think he set up his goal at Forest. Jimenez then put the ball through the weekend. They looked lively at Fulham together. There's some good signs there, isn't there? Yeah, a Mexican and Brazilian front two at Wolves. Who'd have thought it? But yeah, there's obviously some synergy there, isn't there? And they're linking up quite well. Hopefully, we can only benefit from it. Yeah.
Absolutely. Moving on to the end of the show, just moving on briefly to Wolves' trip to Newcastle, where they go for the 4:30 Sky kickoff on Sunday. Steve, what changes do you think they'll make for the weekend?
I can't see too many. I think Cunha possibly comes back in, but quite where he plays, I don't know. We've talked about the Raul Cunha partnership, but how many Premier League teams play with the front two these days, especially away from home against a team who are quite high in the table, albeit have lost a bit of form of late. But yeah, I think they'll find a way to get Cunha back in. Raul starts ahead of Costa, who seems to have got quite a serious injury, although we're still waiting for confirmation of that. So I think Raul starts. I think Cunha probably comes back in. Otherwise, I can't see too many changes from the starting lineup. Chris,
similar sort of feel for yourself?
Yeah. I'll play the three Steve mentioned from Sarabia, Raul, Cunha. I'd like to see those three a bit more. And you could go, Neves, Nunez, and Lamina, couldn't you? If it's the three, you could quite conceivably see, a nice solid 4-3-3. Who knows? There's probably one surprising there. There normally isn't there? So
you watch Ain't Nori come back in now. You have been watching episode 55 of the Wolves Report with Steve Madeley, Chris Tyler, and myself, Ryan Lester. Steve, it's the fun part of the show. We've only had one perfect scorer this season. Jackie Oatley predicted Wolves would win 1-0 and Ruben Neves penalty, and she called it exactly. So no pressure on yourself, Steve. I would like your first scorer and prediction for Newcastle v Wolves.
First scorer, I'm going Newcastle 1, Wolves 1, which I think would be a good result. And I think Kuna's had a few chances, so why not aim to open the scoring?
Look at Tyler's face, music to my ears. Tyler?
Yeah, like Steve said, they're struggling a bit, aren't they? And I think we can go there and win. Again, I've got no logic for it, but I think 2-1 to Wolves and then Jimenez to break the duck.
Well, I've got to stick on that. I can never predict anything but a Wolves win. It's my podcast. I'd look silly if I'm going to predict Wolves to lose. Certainly not doing that. So I'm going to go Newcastle 0, Wolves 2, and Kuna to finally break his duck. You've been watching and listening to episode 55 of the Wolves Report. Thank you so much to Steve Madeley from The Athletic for joining us, our Director of Football, Chris Tyler, and hopefully we are wishing Nocky all the best and hopefully seeing back on the show soon. Enjoy your evening. Up the Wolves.